A brand new study just released looked at people who were doing resistance training and dieting at the same time. They were trying to lose fat while holding on to lean muscle mass. And I mean, who doesn't want that, right? More muscle, less fat. It's like the holy grail of body composition. But despite training consistently, when you try to gain muscle and lose fat by restricting calories, most people end up losing muscle mass. Not necessarily because of the total caloric restriction, but because their protein intake isn't high enough. So how much protein should you be eating if you want to gain muscle and lose fat? Well, that's exactly what this new study looked at. So they're pulling back the curtain on nutrition. And what they found behind that curtain is wild. We're not just talking about bodybuilders and gym rats here. This applies to everyone. Greater muscle mass and less visceral fat are two of the strongest predictors of better health, lower inflammation, and even longer life. So this new study published by Refalo and colleagues in the Strength and Conditioning Journal found a clear linear relationship between protein intake and muscle retention. The authors of the paper started out with this quote: "Individuals often restrict energy intake to lose fat mass while performing resistance training to retain fat-free mass." So another way of saying that is people eat less when they're trying to lose fat. And then they also do strength training to maintain their muscle. So fat-free mass, that term that they used, really means how much your body weighs when you take away the fat, which would include your organs and connective tissue and bones and water and muscle. But for the purposes of this video, we're really just talking about preserving muscle. So after reviewing the data from 52 other studies, this new study found the more protein people ate, the more muscle they kept, with no clear upper limit in the range that they studied. So you can see that in this nice little graph they provided. If people ate less than 1.9 grams per kilogram of their body weight, they would end up losing fat-free mass. The more protein people ate, the more fat-free mass they retained or even gained. And the protein intake didn't seem to have an upper limit, even with the protein intakes greater than 3 grams per kilogram of body weight. So for reference of what that means in the USA, 3 grams per kilogram of body weight is about 1.3 grams per pound of body weight. So if you weigh, let's say 180 pounds, that equates to about 245 grams of protein per day. And again, to put that in context, there's about 6 grams of protein in an egg, and there's about 7 grams of protein in an ounce of meat. So if you have 3 eggs for breakfast, that's 18 grams. Then for lunch, you have a 6-ounce steak, which is about 45 grams of protein. You've got 63 grams of protein total. So you've only covered about 25% of your total needs. On the other hand, if you want to just maintain the fat-free mass you have, the minimum protein intake is 1.9 grams per kilogram of body weight, which is about 0.9 grams per pound of body weight. So again, if you weigh 180 pounds, that's about 155 grams of protein per day, which most people are going to have a hard time doing. Now, this just gets totally out of hand if you're obese. So for example, if you weigh 250 pounds, you would pretty much have to eat a cow every day. The more accurate way of doing it is to actually know your fat-free mass and then go from there. So if you do know your fat-free mass, they provided a graph for that too. And just as an estimate for you, the average American woman weighs about 170 pounds and has about 40% body fat, which means her lean mass is around 111 pounds. According to the Refalo paper, to achieve high muscle retention, she would need to eat between 125 and 211 grams of protein per day. The average American man weighs about 200 pounds with about 28% body fat, giving him around 133 pounds of lean muscle mass. So his target for muscle retention would be between 151 and 255 grams of protein per day. Now contrast that with what people are actually eating in the USA. According to national survey data, the average American adult in their 20s consumes only about 91 grams of protein per day, and by age 70, that number drops to 66 grams of protein per day. So even young, healthy people are falling significantly short of the levels that are associated with preserving muscle. Now, you may be wondering, why is there such a big range that is given in this study for required protein? Well, the study categorized people into low, moderate, and high risk for muscle loss based on how lean they are. People with higher body fat are at lower risk for losing muscle during a weight loss program. But the leaner you are, the more protein you need to avoid sacrificing muscle. So they say, dietary protein should inversely scale with body fat percentage, such that leaner individuals select higher protein targets than those with a higher body fat percentage. And that's where we get these big ranges. So if you have low body fat, more protein intake is required than if you have higher body fat, then less protein is required. But stay within that range if you want to preserve muscle. However, as I mentioned at the start of this video, it's not just about gym performance or physique. I took this picture from a study that shows skeletal muscle is actually a hormone-producing organ. When you train and build muscle, you release chemicals called myokines, powerful chemicals that reduce systemic inflammation, improve insulin sensitivity, and regulate immune function. Conversely, body fat, which is technically called adipose tissue, releases chemicals called adipokines. Most, but not all adipokines are generally pro-inflammatory. So the more muscle you carry, the more anti-inflammatory signaling you generate from muscle cells. And the more fat you carry, particularly visceral fat, which is the fat that sort of wraps around your organs, the more pro-inflammatory signals those fat cells create. That's why lean muscle mass is closely tied with lower cardiovascular risk, diabetes, cognitive decline, and all-cause mortality. Now, when it comes to diet, hitting these higher protein targets can be really challenging for most people. So here's a couple practical tips that can go a long way. Number one, prep your protein at the start of the week. If it's cooked and convenient, you're much more likely to stay consistent. Number two, use a high-quality protein supplement if needed. We've vetted the cleanest, most effective products out there, and we offer a few in-office if you want something research-backed and easy to use. Now, there's a general belief out there that eating more protein is harmful for the kidneys, especially if you already have chronic kidney disease. This is based on early research on the topic. However, that myth has been more recently debunked. A 2024 study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association followed thousands of older adults, including those with mild to moderate kidney disease, and found that higher protein intake was actually linked to lower mortality, not more kidney problems. So if you're lifting weights, if you're recovering from an injury, if you're trying to lose body fat, or you just want to age well, don't underestimate the power of protein in your diet. Muscle is medicine. And if you're unsure how much you need or how to hit your goals, feel free to reach out. I'd love to help you build a plan that works for your life.